This presentation will be covering my book review, which I did on The Game Believes in You, How Games Can Make Our Kids Smarter by Greg Toppo. First off, just a little bit about Greg Toppo, the author of this book. You can generally notice by first glance that a lot of the professions and jobs that he did had to do with writing. So he did journalism, was an educational writer, reporter, and he was also an elementary teacher for 8 years. As a writer, he loved paper-based books and noticed they were losing importance when technology started evolving our world, which was around 2010. That was when he decided to make a book based on the topic of technology. He realized the main reason children were less interested in paper-based books was because they were more interested in the video games, and therefore he made a book on how games can be educational as a book, but tends to be more enjoyable for children. The thesis of this book was often curriculum and digital games have been separated from each other, but he wrote this book so that they can both be put together to create higher engagement in learning if the correct educational games are used. My take on the book was that it is a perfect book for teachers and parents. It goes in depth with the pros and cons of video games and why children like them, which helps me be mindful of how to incorporate games into my future classroom. On this slide are my favorite messages from the book that also summarize the purpose of the book. The main idea of the first quote is that an educational game can interest a child and get them to learn material that usually comes from a book. The quote says, "What I found was they were paying attention to everything but school and the ways it was asking them to slice and dice academic disciplines." What Toppo noticed was when he asked his daughter if she had a favorite book, she did not know what her favorite book was, which he wanted to discover where children's focus was going now, which was a pivotal point in his life where he became interested into writing this book. Children weren't interested in books anymore because smartphones had all the information children needed to know about. This next quote was my favorite one of the book, and it explains how games can do things teachers can't. "A well-designed game sits and waits and waits. It does not care if that wearisome math problem takes you 15 seconds or 4 hours. Do it again, take all day. The game believes in you." Which shows a key argument throughout the book on how beneficial games can be. Toppo did a good job of explaining how our brain works and why games can better stimulate our brain than teachers can by including research from neurologists such as Frank Wilson. Backed up his reasons for integrating curriculum with video games by providing our neurons. I'm sorry, let me start that again. I got all tongue-tied there. But what I wanted to say was that he did a good job of explaining how our brain works and why games can better stimulate our brain than teachers can by including research from neurologists such as Frank Wilson. He backed up his reasons for integrating curriculum with video games by providing our neurons, which transmit information, can become adrenalized through stress, thus accelerates our motivation to complete a task in a game that involves learning timetables. Also, with all of the digital visuals and adrenaline a video game can bring, winning a game such as getting educational problems correct has been proven to produce more dopamine than a teacher can bring with verbal encouragement. For his weaknesses, Toppo could have listed reliable games that readers could incorporate in their child's or student's daily activities. Receiving specific recommended games would have been very beneficial from the educated people Toppo included in his book to further carry out the purpose of his book into action. He also could have rearranged his chapters, which is what I'll talk more about in the next slide. This book was titled The Game Believes in You because unlike people who have other things to take care of and might not have the time available to wait for you to solve a math problem or might not have enough patience, a video game gives you all the time you need to answer an educational problem at your own pace and is always there. Overall, this book was effectively informative, and Toppo did a notable job including professionals to strengthen and support his ideas, as well as showed how educated he was on children's learning based on his years of experience as previously being a teacher. Toppo also included and covered a wide variety of areas on his central idea of bringing and using video games as an educational tool through his 12 chapters. However, the main critique I have is I believe he could have ordered them in a different way. For example, ordering the chapters by going over the neuroscience effects of video games after the broad idea of the book would have better helped readers to understand the biological impacts, which I think is most important and can help lure readers in interest right away. Another example of how I'd order the chapters is then explaining the way math could be taught without words through technology, which would reveal how powerful it could help children that have learning disabilities and are more visual learners. I think those types of changes would make the flow smoother instead of chapters jumping everywhere in topics that don't seem to connect to each other as much as others could. In conclusion, I recommend this book for all teachers, especially since our world continues to be more technologically advanced and classroom material should be evolving to fit each generation.